got the reading from Bishop Helen Ann as well as a blessing. Thank you, Tame.
Tēnā koutou katoa I tēnei ata, I tēnei rangi hoki kānui te mihi atu kia koutou mihi ana ki te koromatua hoki me te koromatua tuarua a Martin, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. E te atu o kaharawa koe nei mātou e whakawhetai kia koe I tēnei rangi ki manaki tia tēnei hui huinga kia anga whakamua mo te taone o kirikiri roa. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koe manaki tia mātou I rungi te tika me te pono. Ko koe tau mātou piringa, ko koe tau mātou toka tūmoana, anei mātou e whakawhetai rungi te ingoa o tau mātou kei whakaora, mo ake, āmini. Thank you. Now, our minister's not here, but they passed me on just a reading, so I'll do that reading this afternoon on his behalf for us. Tēnā koutou. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise and the evil on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For it is for love those who love you, what reward you have. Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as the Heavenly Father is perfect. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. That's this afternoon's reading on behalf of our chaplain and minister. Tēnā koutou.
Okay. So, first of all today I'd like to thank Tame, our kaumatua, for the karakia, for praying a blessing over our decision making for the City of Hamilton today. And I also thank you for the reading. Appreciate all you do as Hamilton's spiritual advisor and guide, Tame. So thank you very much. Or secondly, I'd like to apologise that I'm late to this meeting. Thank you for being patient. So I now declare the council meeting of the 16th of November 2017 open at 14 minutes past 1 in the afternoon. We have apologies from Councillor Taylor and Councillor Bunting, who are on council business today. So do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor James and Councillor Gary. Confirmation of agenda.
We also have a apology from Councillor McPherson.
Sorry to disappoint you. I don't accept that apology. You have to work on your
So confirmation of agenda, there is one addition, and that is the letter from the Ministry of Justice, which will be on the Alcohol Regulatory and Licensing Authority question that was asked, which will be introduced during my Chair's report. Do we have a mover and a seconder for the move again by Councillor Gary, this time is seconded by Councillor James. Yes, just sorry, before I accept that first and second, I'll just hand over to Leanne and then we'll take your question. We'll take your question first, actually.
Just, I'm wondering, there should be PX minutes of the 18th of October. I was on annual leave at that meeting, but I've had a quick look back. And there's briefing notes for the 18th of October, but there was a council meeting on the 18th of October. We've got the public minutes.
So just to clarify, Councillor O'Leary, so they were only minutes received in the PX item for the October meeting of council, and we don't minute the acceptance of minutes because otherwise we get in a cycle of having a PX agenda item purely to receive the fact that we received something at the previous minute. So there was no substantive business, to clarify,
Okay.
in the PX section of the meeting of the 18th of October.
Okay.
It was simply to receive the minutes of the previous meeting.
Okay. Which was the 21st of September, wasn't it? I've written down a note here that to myself it says I need these as one of the PX reports today refers to those minutes. But
That's
maybe I'll
correct.
just. Oh, I've got it. Thank you. Yep.
Leanne.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Yes, just to confirm that Mayor King will be providing a verbal update, as he said, in relation to the item 8 in his chair's report, with supplementary information has been provided in relation to item 8, which is the policy review on Class 4 gambling venue policy. That was circulated to you prior to the meeting. And also, also previously circulated was an amended page 6 for item 2C, which is in the public excluded City Honours and Civic Awards 2017. So you have those documents. Thank you.
And the order of the meeting may be changed depending on if there are staff here who are here to present on a paper, so that we can move them through as quickly as possible, or any other members, anyone else who's here in connection with a particular paper will move that paper forward to make best use of their time. So we have a mover and a seconder for that. So all those in favour, any against? Carried. Declarations of interest. There's no declarations of interest. Public forum. There's no public forum. So we're now moving to item 5, page 6, confirmation of council minutes. I'll hand this over to the Democracy Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Do we have a mover? Councillor? Yes, Gary.
On page 9, paragraph 6, bulletproof, paragraph B, refers to Hillsborough Terrace Road stopping port coming to this meeting. That's not on the agenda?
Will be covered off in the Chair's report. You'll see that there's an item on the Chair's report.
Oh,
in
is that,
relation to
okay,
this.
that's it. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Gary. All those for, any against? Carried. Item 6, page 15, I'll hand to the Democracy Manager.
Again, councillors, happy to take any questions.
Do we have a mover? Councillor James, a seconder. Councillor Gary. All those for, any against? Carried. Okay, so from there, Corey and Full, are you here for a particular paper? Okay, so okay.
Sanitary policy, building policy, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I think we'll just go straight there because you're here and waiting. So that's item 9, page 75. So I'm sure everyone knows who you are, but I will get you to introduce yourselves for the record.
Yep, and just introduce yourself.
I'm Phil Saunders. I'm the Principal Building Advisor for the building unit.
And again, Ricky Manarangi, the Corporate Policy Specialist.
Thank you. So I'll hand over to you to introduce the paper or to take it as read.
Happy to take it as read and any questions that elected members may have.
Okay, yes, one question, Councillor Gary.
Just for my clarity, this has all been driven because the word earthquake has been taken out of the legislation, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And this is a little one, is it unsanity or insanity? Insanity is...
And sanitary, yeah.
Sanitary, oh, okay. It's not mad buildings?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just concerned.
Councillor Angela.
Page 76, financial considerations under 17, that's coming from existing budgets.
That's correct, yes.
Yep. Okay, and just in terms of the movement from the within sanitary buildings, you haven't made any principal changes, have you, to the policy?
It's pretty much as per the Act, so the Act stipulates how we go about doing things with the sanitary and dangerous buildings.
Yeah, I'm referring to our current policy. Have you made any substantive changes from our current policy, apart from taking out all of the earthquake references, earthquake-prone building references?
No, not particularly.
You haven't made any. My second question, Mayor Andrew, if I could just make a couple of comments, just on the statement of proposal that goes out. I wondered on page 76, under quick facts, if we can plain English it a little bit more. The third one down says, what buildings does the policy apply to? It says the policy applies to any building where the current conditions meet. Sorry, 78. Sorry, yeah, and I'm under quick facts, the third one, and it just says, what buildings does the policy apply to? It says the policy applies to any building where the current conditions mean the building could be dangerous or unsanitary. Well, that's a given. I just wondered if there you wouldn't change the language to any building where the current conditions are unsafe or unhealthy, because that's really the activity we're addressing with the policy. Up to you. And my second issue with the statement of proposal, just trying to get more plain English for members of the public, on page 79, I don't know, when council goes out with several options, then that's appropriate to put options, but unless the members change it, we're simply going out with a proposal, and that is for a new policy. So I don't understand why you've got up the options, option A, support it, option B, don't support it. We really only need the council is proposing this new draft policy, because through submissions people will say whether they like it or not. I just think cleaning that up would be more helpful.
It's a legislative requirement if we have to go through the special consultative procedure to actually have an option to adopt or not. In this particular circumstance, if we didn't adopt a policy, we would be acting against legislation. So it's a given that we probably would need to adopt a policy, but it's more of a formality.
So, but are you saying the legislation forbids us to use plain English and say this council has reviewed, here is our proposal, give us your feedback? We can't do that under legislation.
We just have to outline that there is an option for council not to adopt a policy or to adopt a policy.
Can I just jump in, Councillor O'Leary? So I think the key message from Councillor O'Leary is about plain Englishing it. So the big thing is making sure that the members of the public can interpret it clearly and understand it. Can you specifically ask and make sure our legal advisors are comfortable to see whether or not we can just state a proposal? Because by default, if you don't adopt it, you haven't, and there's consequences.
That's
so
my point.
I understand where Councillor O'Leary is coming from. So it's in that overall guise of plain Englishing. So just check that, draft something up, and just have our lawyers have a quick look at it and see whether or not it satisfies the requirements of legislation.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. On page 85, which is the feedback form, paragraph or item number 4 of it is asking the submitter's age. Is that relevant?
It's something which goes in all of our statement of proposals, so we can get an understanding of the sort of age groups that are responding and all of that information and collect it over time.
Why is that why in this particular situation is that relevant?
So it's not particular to this consultation, but it's just it's an item which is in all of our consultations. You'll see it in the consultation documents for gambling as well.
It's, I'll jump in, Councillor Mellott. So it's a way for us to test whether or not we're actually effectively meeting or connecting with aspects of the community, and it's a way for us to actually gauge whether or not we've actually hit certain age groups, certain groups of the community. And if it doesn't work, we need to make sure we adapt our approach so we can. So it's more about data gathering for effectiveness of our engagement rather than specifically providing information for determination of this particular submission.
Okay, so it's not so much that a 65-year-old will have a different view on building ownership and or stuffs like that. Rather, it's that older people being asked questions.
Well, it's more the fact is, you know, we go out there and we get 150 responses and it's all people in their 60s.
Why would that matter?
It may well be that the mechanism is we want to reach in future more people across the broader spectrum. We might have to go back and question our engagement approach. Because, I mean, the whole point behind democracy is to engage with as much aspect of the community as possible, and that just helps us focus our response.
Okay, I guess it's not a major issue.
But it's not information that biases this council in terms of response.
Yeah, I just don't know how that gives us any. Okay, all right. I mean, you ask. I mean, the question above is a lot more rational to me. Are you a building owner, a tenant, a business, blah blah blah?
Yes.
Okay, I just don't know how that helps us, but okay, that's right. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Just going on forward from Angela's original question around those two options, and I agree entirely with what Rich said around that. There's no point having a Clayton's option, the option that isn't an option, but you can. But presumably, we either adopt this as it is, or an option to the public is to have an amended policy. So parts can be amended. That's more on point, isn't it? That's the second option. They either suggest amendments, improvements that we could adopt or not. So it's not as simple as take this one or don't take any, is it?
Yeah, so the proposed policy is in essence an amendment of what was once the earthquake-prone, dangerous and unsanitary buildings policy. And you'll see there's a track change version which is attached to the back of it.
Yeah.
But no, I do take your point. I think leading on from what the Chief Executive suggested, I think we'll be able to get the wording right.
Well, I do think we've got to do the wording to empower the public to submit on the right things that they're able to submit on. And it's not whether we have one that we're asking them to submit on, because we've got to have one. It's, are there any bits and pieces within the policy that you might think we've not got quite right? That's what we're interested in, right?
Correct. And so if a particular member of the public raises a point that's pertinent to the policy that this council believes is relevant, they can change the policy. So effectively, that's Paula's point's well made. So everything in the policy, as long as it meets legislative requirements, Phil, and it meets the point of the policy, is up for discussion and debate with the community through this process. So the natural conclusion to that is changes can be made as long as it's legislatively robust.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, are we genuine about inviting people? Some people might have serious sort of credibility in this area. Are we really open to them proposing, or we're just trying to get it through? Because we've got to, you know, we've got to be clear what we go out and ask people to think about. Anyway, I've said that. Thank you.
Councillor Ange.
Sorry, Manager, I just have a supplementary question on the earthquake-prone. Richard, when are we getting an update on the earthquake-prone buildings in the city and the register, etc.?
I'm looking at there's some blank faces. Well,
Okay.
It's something we haven't prepared for, but I'll circulate them.
No, of course not.
I'll circulate them by exec update where we're at and an update on that.
Yeah, and just there'll be a report coming, I'm assuming, to Dave's committee.
Sorry,
next
wait a sec.
year.
There's one less blank looking face in the room because Corey has an answer.
Good.
So, thank you. So we've proposed to bring a paper to the December meeting on the priority building. So under the new legislation that's been put through, we're required to look at both priority buildings as well as all earthquake-prone buildings.
Yeah.
So we have a proposal to bring that to the December council meeting.
So that's council meeting, not Dave's committee?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, can I just make a request then that you look and see if there's any progress that's been made on that research that was sort of out there? I think the government was doing it on the cost-benefit analysis for building owners to comply with the Act.
Sure, absolutely.
It's been some time since that was raised, so yeah, I'd like to see some progress if there is any.
Sure.
Great, thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Okay, before we go to debate, is the councillors agreeable to 2 minutes debating time and 1 minute extra time, as has been the recent custom in council meetings? Any objection to that? Okay.
Just what is the rationale for doing that in this occasion? Because it's a very short agenda. Just wondering. I mean, we did it last time because we were severely constrained for time to debate, but today we presumably aren't. Is there a reason that you want to do that? Or
It only needs one person around this table to object, and we will go back to 5 minutes. So if you'd like to object, this is
No,
your
I'm just
option.
asking what the thinking around that was. That was all.
To keep the meeting moving. 2 minutes and 3 minutes is a long time to actually get your point across. I believe it's enough time. But it's the standing order say 5 minutes. If one person objects, we go back to 5 minutes.
Oh no, look, I'm in this for this agenda. That's fine.
2 or 3 minutes.
2 minutes with 1 minute extension.
Okay. Okay, I'm happy with that for this meeting.
So basically that's on standing order. If one member objects, then leave is not given by the meeting.
That's correct.
That's understood. And that, with respect, is democratic. So at any time, and I may be one of them, who wants to go back to the 5 minutes, because you know I like 5 minutes, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, but this is your opportunity, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll run this meeting on 2 minutes with 1 minute extension. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Ange. Oh, nobody yet. We haven't. Okay, moved by Councillor Ange, seconded by Councillor Leo. Thank you. So, Ange, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Andrew. Look, I just want to use my 2 minutes, I'll be much briefer than that, just to push the point that I raised in the questioning around the statement of proposal. I've been waiting for a really long time on council and in previous councils for us to do things better with plain English. And I'm just a little bit frustrated with the lack of progress that we're making. I don't know why we can't use plain English. I don't know why we can't say to the public, hey, here's a statement of proposal. This is what we, your elected members, are proposing, and tell a little bit more of a story. I think that engagement would increase if we did that, and you know, there wouldn't be any pushback if you used a couple of photos as well, or some pictures, and we just engaged in a real human way. Ricky, you did a great job on the, which one was that I gave some feedback with the plain English? Significance and engagement policy, and it made it a lot more readable, but we can go much further, particularly when we go out with a statement of proposal. We want to hear your views, we want to hear your feedback. We're talking to people in our community, so let's talk to people in our community rather than a government talking to people in our community.
Okay, Ange, would you like a right of reply?
You can argue with yourself, Councillor Ange.
All those for, any against, carried unanimously. And now we'll go back to Ricky. You can stay there. Thanks very much, Phil. Thank you, Corey. And thanks for all you do in a difficult department at times. So, Ricky, we're on, members, if we can go to item 8, turn to item 8 on page 21. Thank you. Now, on this item, I will move the staff recommendation with option 3, or option C, if there is a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Okay, we have no questions. We'll move to debate. No. Councillor Ange.
Just press the buttons.
So
but I do have a question.
We're in questioning the questions. Thank you. Ricky, could you? Thank you. Welcome, Sean. Yes.
going on. Sorry. Page 29, and I found the factual information there from the DIA data in Hamilton City really helpful. The third paragraph down, it says there are an estimated 14,713 pokie users in Hamilton City, each spending an average of $1,600. I'm assuming that is annually. How does that compare with other cities, other metro cities in the country? Do we have that information?
No, we don't have that information as such. Yeah, we just don't have that information, I'm sorry.
All right. Page 30, there's, and that again was helpful, you've listed all of the pokie venues in Hamilton, and in the policy they reflect back into our permitted gaming areas. Oh, no, I've lost my question. Wait, hold please, caller. Oh, actually, here's a question, supplementary question. Page 33, total population 141,000. We've lost 20,000 people. 25,000.
That's a 2013
Is it?
census, yes.
Oh, right. Not helpful. No. Look, come back to me.
Councillor Robb.
Thanks, Chair. Attachment 2, I'm just trying to find my way through where I wrote my questions down, sorry. Attachment 2 is the report from the DHB. To me, the attachment to the position statement on gambling seems to be quite a generic sort of... Oh, sorry, that's on page 35. The position statement, which they say is a new statement for them, appears to be quite sort of generic about the issues around gambling. Have they expressed to us whether or not they support the current policy that we have, or whether they feel we should make changes to that?
No, not to our knowledge. With the policy scheduled to be reviewed in 2019, we were going to have conversations with them to help us in the development of that policy, but with the shorter time frame it's been, we haven't had that opportunity to involve them as much as we would like to.
Okay, so we'll be relying essentially on them to come back and submit if we do go out for consultation.
Correct. They have indicated that they would, if there was an opportunity to consult on a policy, they would be involved in that part of the process.
But if we retained, it's not option 1, is it? If we retained the present policy, there would be no need for consultation.
If you retain the existing policy, the legislation is quite clear that the consultation applies upon the adoption of a new or amended policy.
Yep.
Our existing policy wouldn't be amended, so essentially there wouldn't need to be an adoption, so we wouldn't need to consult.
Okay, so what is driving staff to pursue options 2 and 3? Are there systemic problems with the current policy that is sort of driving a need to consider either option 2 or 3 to encompass some changes?
Essentially it was providing elected members in response to the request to bring this policy back and have a look at it. 2 options. One option where there's some further restrictions around relocation.
Yep. I understand that. Yeah, I just wondered if there had been some practical problems with the current policy that was driving staff or those who are closer to the coalface, if you like, to suggest that parts of the current policy weren't working. So in options 2 and 3, we're suggesting changes that might make the policy, the existing policy, more effective going forward.
We are simply responding to the resolution of the Community and Services Committee to bring this back to Council.
Okay, and these are some of the suggestions they made at the committee for possible changes?
Yeah, so the discussion at that committee was around having a more restrictive policy.
Okay. All right, thank you. I haven't got any further questions at the moment, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Just the report in and of itself seems to be totally one-sided. It doesn't look at any of the benefits. People freely entertaining themselves at poker machines, the freedom aspect doesn't talk at all, I don't think, about where the funding goes or the benefit from the funding into the community. You want to respond to that?
So the supplementary information that you would have received through email last night fleshes out a little bit more of the other side in terms of the gaming proceeds and where they are allocated.
Okay, so if that got there last night, I haven't seen it. So.
Yep, no, that's good. In terms of the attachments to the report that are not the statement of proposals or the policies themselves, they're as to comply with the legislation which requires social impact assessment. So it was more in essence to comply with the section 1012 of the Act, providing that information, which might give the appearance that it is perhaps unbalanced.
Yeah. But social impact goes both ways, doesn't it? A small number of people become addicted to these things and causes problems. A large number of people through their sports clubs and community clubs and the council itself, or previously the council itself, had been a beneficiary of these things. So there is, I can't weigh whether it's more on one side or the other. It's a very difficult one to do, but there certainly is enormous amount of pro-benefit from the distribution of the funds.
Yeah, I suppose that would be your decision as the elected members to decide what social impact is.
That isn't in here at all, is it?
As I said, it suggests the other, in terms of the gaming proceeds and where they're allocated, are in that supplementary document.
Okay, all right. Just page 24. There's a box down there with the headline of advantages and disadvantages. On the advantages side, we've got paragraph 6, and it's an advantage that community funding is, well, put a bit of grammar in, is still possible from the corporate societies, which is the grassroots trust, etc., until all venues are permanently closed under the existing policy. Is the policy that eventually, is that one of the goals, and I probably was there when we voted for it, but I can't remember the goal being to take it down to zero. Is that the goal, is it?
So all three of the options are sinking lid options, so we don't allow for any further venue consents. The only thing that we do allow is relocations and mergers. Mm-hmm. So essentially, when someone closes and is not relocating or merging, then we won't allow another new venue under the existing policy.
Okay. And then there's an interesting comment on page 35, which is the DHB's thing. 1.4 acknowledges that inequities exist in the harm caused by gambling, with problem gambling rates highest amongst Maori and Pacific people. Anyone figured out why that is?
No, I can't elaborate on that particular point.
Okay, so there's no cause and effect here. There's no, and that's not a particularly useful piece of information. Why is that badder than it being European people being more addicted to?
There are potentially other things in that report which might be useful in allowing you to make a social impact assessment. That is one thing. We wouldn't be able to isolate one thing and not other things, I suppose, and it would be your interpretation of everything that's in that report. It's a report which wasn't put together by council.
Okay, but it's something you've brought forward to council to contemplate, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. I've got a number of questions, but the first one was this supplementary paper. Is that on OneDrive? Because I couldn't see it when I downloaded stuff yesterday.
I believe it is, but I'll double check.
Oh, it's a hard copy, is it? Okay. So it's just been put around now.
Is that it there?
That's correct, yes. Yep.
So why has that just come out now? Because these questions they've been asked about the stuff, for instance, Gary's points have been in there, they've been around for a long time. It's nothing new, that subject area.
So, Councillor Dave, that report was only received, I only received that report yesterday, and so from the Problem Gambling Foundation. So there was an initial report, which is included in the attachments in the agenda that went out. The supplementary, the additional report was received after the agenda was distributed.
If it's got information about the proceeds of gambling and where they're distributed in our area, that's available from the Department of Internal Affairs at any time our staff want to get it, and has been supplied by our staff direct. We've never waited for the Problem Gambling Foundation to deliver that to us. I don't know why. So that's not a big point there, but I'm just thinking, I totally understand Gary's points. If we're only getting stuff on the day of the meeting, which is easily available, I could have got it if someone had asked me by Googling it. Mr. Google's quite helpful. So that's one point. The second one is, how useful is data that's 4 years out of date in terms of population and that? Why would we even put this in there? And this is a question I've asked of other council departments. When we say that's the census. Now, if you look under Stats New Zealand's website, they have subnational population estimates as of 30th of June 2017 there, and with several different breakdowns. If we're talking about a policy we're proposing to the public now, why aren't we using up-to-date figures instead of figures that are so old? I mean, we've had a whole new city and a bit added in Hamilton since then.
So that's part of the attachment from the Problem Gambling Foundation. That's not something that we have included as an independent attachment. That is part of the Problem Gambling Foundation attachment that they have supplied to us. So we have included that attachment in its entirety.
Why aren't we doing our own updates like we used to in this area? I mean, Councillor O'Leary raised some questions about how we compared with other areas. I mean, some of that information in the past has been supplied by staff when we've had the debates about these policies. It's useless now because it's with no comparisons with others, and it's not up to date anyway.
I think if it was, if we had done it at this scheduled review of 2019, because the policy only been in since September 2016, we would have had opportunity to provide a much more comprehensive report, but in that shorter period, it was given other constraints around the long-term plan. Originally, we were to come back in October, but we came back in November, and through the chair's report, that was permitted. So it was around restrictions around sort of resourcing at the time.
I can understand that, but I guess isn't Councillor Mallett's point that it's a sort of a one-sided report quite valid when we're only going to the Problem Gambling Foundation and they're supplying the source information?
Yeah, so the rationale for going to the Problem Gambling Foundation is to allow them to do some of the legwork in terms of collecting and collating some of that information that is, as you suggest, is Department of Internal Affairs information, Statistics New Zealand information, but framing it so that it's you can interpret, you can make some interpretations or make some assumptions based on that information.
Okay. One of the points that's been made every time we've had a debate about this, which is about 5 times we've looked at the policy and updates since we first were required to have one, a number of us have made the point that while we can only put in policy to deal with Class 4 gambling machines, that there is a huge pokey machine site just within sight of us here over at the casino that we need to take into account at the same time. So I'm wondering why there's no information at all that I could see about that in there. And those figures also readily available, numbers of machines and the annual spend, for instance, and the amount given out from the trust that distributes money from there, all available. And while we can't make a policy that changes anything they do, we can certainly, if you want to know how many poking machines there are per head of population, which has been one statistics we've looked at in the past, and how much is distributed per head of population, all that we don't get an accurate picture by just looking at the machines in pubs and clubs. So why haven't we got the casino stuff in here?
It was just in terms of our putting the options together, policy options, positions, felt it was outside the scope, as you suggested, of council class 4 gambling as to what we could actually do.
It's not outside the scope of what we can, what information we can be given. It's only outside the scope of what we can legislate on.
Can I suggest, Councillor Dave, that perhaps we get that information for context, and so when council is deliberating on the policy, that we have that information to provide some context for that?
Yeah, that would be handy, thanks. The last point was also a point Gary touched on, the DHB submission there. I look at the letter from their executive director that says that they've prepared something for us here, and then I go and read it, and it hasn't got, that I could see, one single word in the information they did about Hamilton or even the Waikato. And I've seen that information. That's a national statement by the Ministry of Health, I believe, not a statement by Waikato DHB. If you read it, I can't see the point of including it, because they haven't supplied us anything, information locally. So it's not, I mean, I guess my question would be, do you think it's worth the paper it's printed on in terms of debate about Hamilton City's policy?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay, and I might note in asking that question that a certain other member of the DHB who's sitting not too far from me has raised directly with management in public meeting of the DHB that they should be supplying us, the City Council and other councils, relevant and useful information. And I don't think a national generic statement is what this council's after when it's trying to make local policy. So that's not really a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just to follow on support where Councillor Mallett and Councillor McPherson were going with the information that I think is missing from the report, and not telling you to do your job, although I'm telling you to do your job, and that while you've covered off the resolution, you know, we rely on you, I rely on you to provide expert advice from both sides, and I think the only way you've done that in this particular report is with option 1, which is maintaining the status quo. That's the only way that I can see that where another side to this, you know, the effects on the community funding, etc., has been expressed. But that aside, have we had any more information or been updated from the Cosmopolitan Club on their relocation efforts?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So we haven't chased that up with them, because I thought that they were working with us in some aspect, because for me personally, that was a tension between going further with a sinking the policy and that. And we haven't reached out to them and had any conversation?
No, not again, not to my knowledge.
That's disappointing. Can I ask why we haven't looked at, when I look at the spread of where these clubs are, and nationally and internationally, like alcohol outlets, they respond and move into lower socio-economic areas. Have you done any work, or have you considered what it would look like if we went out with a policy that started reducing or reduced in a new policy the areas where they could locate? Because we have a lot of the city that are gambling permitted areas. Have you looked or done any work in that space?
Sorry, Councillor Leary, could you just repeat that question?
Have you done, from pages 42 onwards, I think, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 odd. We have 9 odd gambling, 8 areas in the city where gambling is permitted from a footprint area. It's a lot. And nationally and internationally, pokie machines are located in lower socioeconomic areas. So if I drill down further, have you looked at what if we took out some gambling permitted areas, like, for example, Frankton, lower socioeconomic area, Dinsdale? What if we looked at that? Have you looked at that? Have you investigated that as an option? And if not, why not?
You're talking in terms of the gambling permitted areas, those maps 1 to 9?
Yeah.
No, so we haven't, because to do that in that limited time frame, we would require probably involvement of demographers and a few other things that would be a little bit tricky to probably do in a 2-month period, to do it properly. So no, we haven't. Essentially, these are the maps which roll over from the existing policy that have been in place for a little while.
So, Mr. C, if I can just make a comment, it's disappointing to hear that we are struggling to do basic business as usual stuff, policies and bylaws, and that we don't have the resource to do it. This will be the 9th time we've reviewed this policy in 13 years, and we've never been able to yet achieve what the majority of members want. And I'm not saying I would support, I'm not supporting the motion or what at this point, but to hear from the staff that they're lacking the resource to give us a full and detailed report with all of the options and all the expert advice, and we haven't explored any new options, I'm struggling with that.
I'm not specifically aware of the, sorry, there wasn't a question, but I'll respond.
Yeah, no, it was a question.
Yeah, it was a question.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Question.
Okay. So firstly, I'm not aware specifically of the resourcing aspects associated with this, so I'll ask Sean to respond to that aspect of it in particular in this case. But I've said numerous times we manage business as usual, but when big events such as 10-year plans and anything outside business usual comes along, we don't have the capacity. And in some cases when it's what we should do more often is come back to council and actually identify when we don't have capacity and seek additional budget, but that's something that we're reluctant to do. Yeah. Sean?
In relation to the geographic areas, that wasn't something that we put within the scope of this policy review. So we were responding. So given that we had adopted the policy as recently as September 2016, and there was substantial debate at that time on sort of various aspects of the policy, the review that we undertook at this time was was in response to that request from the Community and Services Committee. So it wasn't, we didn't think it required a full-blown review of everything to do with the gambling policy. It was responding to the resolution from that committee. So if under the normal course of events, we would be reviewing this policy in 2019 and would have done a full review at that stage. That wasn't the scope of the work that we undertook at this time.
Well, I think you've just answered my question, because I was going to say that this requires, to do anything other than keep the policy the way it is at the moment, it requires further staff resourcing and costs of between, it's quite a range really, isn't it, between 7,000 and 17,000 for any of the amended options. And I noted also, and that I was going to ask you, although it looks like the current policy is being effective in terms of there's no increase in pokies, they might be minimally reducing. The full review was going to take 3 years to collect the data, and that makes sense to me because we really want to understand how this is all doing. Why And did you just say it's because we asked for this to be reviewed early, did we? Who did? Oh, I can't recall that occurring. You were chairing it. It probably was, but
You're not drinking anymore, are you?
no. Nor gambling, nor smoking. No, but it's a serious question. It was from that discussion. It was that discussion. Yeah, okay, I'd have to look at the recommendation more clearly next time, but thank you anyway.
Motion. Your motion is on the table. Am I correct? Yep.
Go ahead.
Are you, okay, well, my amendment will be that the council receives this report and no amendments are made to the existing Class 4 gambling venue policy, which is A on page 21.
I'll second that. Give you a glass of wine.
Councillor Paula seconded that.
That's fine.
It'll be cheap.
Okay, so we're going to debate. I'll start. Yep, so we've got an amendment on the board and we've got a motion on the board. So I'll be speaking to the motion to start with. Yours is the amendment. Moved by Rob, seconded by Ange. So we've got option A and option C. So option C is the motion, option A is the amendment. Councillor, we've moved to debate now. Okay. So playing on poker machines is highly addictive. Council, that's us, the gatekeeper. A sinking lid with exemptions is a facade, a token gesture. It is not as effective as what it could be. It is proven playing pokies has a high level of harm attached. Families can be torn apart by those addicted to playing on these one-armed bandits. We are in a position today to introduce for consultation a responsible way to over time reduce the number of pokies while giving business owners grandfather rights protecting their income. Councillor Dave. No, you're on the board as next. So. Sorry? You're on the board as next. I was following Councillor Southgate. Okay. No, I'm not moving. Councillor Roberts. I just moved myself down the list. Look, standing orders are very clear. The mover speaks first and then the chair is taking whoever is on the board in order. There is nothing as standing orders to say that the mover and a motion becomes second, an amendment comes second. But I'll hand it over to the Democracy Manager for advice.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Typically in this instance, when we're hearing the motion and the amendment together, the mover of the motion goes first, the mover of the amendment goes second, and then you would take other speakers in the order in which they've...
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McPherson has said that we've looked at this policy many times in recent years, and indeed Councillor O'Leary then quoted that we've had 9 reviews over 13 years. What I'm not hearing today is that there are worse problems around gambling since we did the most recent reviews, and nor am I hearing that there's any apparent weaknesses in our current policy that needs changing. I think the present policy does go a long way to maintaining a balance between freedom and choice and promoting limitations and restrictions on what has already been identified as a community problem. So I'm seeking support from councillors to continue with the existing Class 4 gambling venue policy. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I don't disagree with anything that Mayor Andrews said around the harmful effects of gambling or some of the moral thoughts around gambling either. It is harmful. We do want to reduce it in our communities, and we need to be doing a number of things to achieve that, along with other harmful behaviours. But however, the reason I'm not supporting the motion today and I'm supporting the amendment is really quite clearly because this is just too soon. The existing policy was only adopted in September 2016. It was anticipated that there would be a robust collecting of statistical data to help us make the right decision. There is a cost attached to this. Just under 20,000 perhaps. The staff, we are in a very, very busy period with the LTP with lots of important issues to consider. This is important, but it's not so urgent that it needs to be done right now ahead of getting that data in. I'm really, really keen to make sure that everything we collect in the way of information around gambling helps us make that next stage of decision rather than just doing a decision without that. And personally for myself, I don't want to just know whether the numbers of machines have gone down because that's just one aspect. But I'd like to have conversation and dialogue with people who work with gambling and addictions to see whether actually the harmful behaviours are starting to reduce, because that's the outcome we want in the end. We want families safe in any way we can, and that includes dealing with this particular social problem along with a number of others. Thank you.
Councillor Dove.
Thank you. The conversation that Councillor Paula wants can't be had, I suggest, with option 1, the amendment, but can be had with option 2 or 3, which involves consultation program with the public. So if you want that conversation, you need to have some consultation set up, which is what's being proposed in the motion. So that's where you'll get that discussion if that's what you really want, Paula. And I'm not suggesting you don't, but that's the only way in this current motion to get that. I don't think, and I sort of echo a bit what you're saying, that the report actually helps us get where we intended to be after this motion was moved earlier in the year or the end of last year, which was having enough information to be able to make a draft decision to send it out for consultation. Unfortunately, for instance, I will say openly, the DHB paper isn't worth the paper it's printed on. It's a generic national statement which doesn't refer to Hamilton one iota. It's a waste of time, space and paper. And the information that is 4 or 5 years old doesn't help us any more than when we made our last policy. There was a time in the cycle of making these where this particular policy, which is always a bit contentious, is made early in the term of a council, so that a new incoming council could stamp its flavour. It's drifted over time, and it's now near the end of that term, of a term of council. So what we did in 2016 was make a policy with a month to go before the new council came in. So this will, if the motion's passed, help get it back towards the cycle that it should be in my opinion. The third thing is option 3 is the only way of getting a true sinking lid, i.e. no one's getting rid of any existing machines or sites, but when they close down voluntarily,
I'll move.
Yeah, thanks.
Seconder for an extension, Councillor
When they
Jones.
move voluntarily, thank you, they're not allowed to reopen. At the moment, there are some circumstances where if a pokey site moves, it can be allowed to reopen elsewhere. Clubs are, Rob talked about weaknesses. One of the weaknesses is clubs. They can move and amalgamate and have more machines than other places, and they return less money to the community than do any of the privately owned ones. So I think that's a current weakness in the policy that the motion does address. Thanks.
Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I want to commend Councillor McPherson. I was a very young girl when he campaigned on to come on to council. I was a very young lass, and he was campaigning against, I think, the casino at the time, and he has been principled against gambling and particularly pokie machines since I was a very young lass through to my political career to today. So he does need to be commended on his stance, because he has been unwavering, and I have some sympathy for that. My sticking point with this, and I've been consistent with this, is that, and when we look at the supplementary handout that we've been given, is the over $9 million given back to community groups from these machines to Hamilton in the 16-17 year. $9 million would be an awful lot of sausage sizzles and lemonade stands for these community groups, and it's just a sign of the times. When I was growing up and raising funds with my pony club, that's all we had were sausage sizzles and lemonade stands. So that is one sticking point for me. I don't know, without the information, the actual impact on those community groups if we go for a true sinking lid, but I have some empathy there. I have been known in the past to call the incentive that comes with pokie machines, that was very cleverly put into the legislation, I have to say, as devil in a Santa suit, and it is a devil in a Santa suit, because they do hand out gifts to the tune of $9 million. My second sticking point, and this is that tripped me up, well, not tripped me up, but where my vote went last time when we looked at this, was the COSI Club. And they're in a, I'm assuming still, unless they've done some renovations, a building.
I'll move. Seconded by
Thank
Leah.
you. That's no longer fit for purpose, and the revenue that they have from their pokie machines provides activities for their members, who are mainly older retired people. It subsidises their meals and their social activities, so I don't really have a sense of how they would be impacted if they couldn't move as well. So those are the two things that I struggle with. But I do respect and want to commend Councillor McPherson for his almost lifetime passion against this. And if this fails, I'm sure he will bring it back at some point in the future. Thank you.
Don't be fooled. These machines are traded. They're a commodity. They generate wealth at the expense of broken families, lost houses, pain and destruction. Option 1 stops this opportunity now. Option 3 lets us go out to consultation and get feedback to come back to this committee for us to consider different views around pokie machines. So this is on our shoulders. We're the gatekeeper, and that's what we're voting on now. So I urge you to vote for the motion. Councillor Dave. No, sorry. Sorry, I thought you had it. Okay, so we'll go to the board for this. So we're now voting on the amendments. No speaking, please. Okay, so we're now moved to the motion. Sorry, I thought you'd seen it.
It's on the screen.
The vote is equal.
Yeah, I'm using my custom vote as I customarily do. So we now move to the motion.
The motion is carried 7-4-3 against.
Yes, you can, but no discussion about the vote, but you can. Yeah.
Now that it's going out for consultation, that there be a further report to Paula's committee with the consultation documents, information. to be supplied, because I think that's been identified as an issue.
And could we have that for the next council meeting? Is that realistic?
Probably not for the next council meeting, but
Well, it will need to be if this is going out to consultation at the beginning of February, because there isn't another meeting after that one.
Isn't there a 30th of January or something?
The schedule's in here.
Hang on, we'll just get a reply on that first.
Richard, do you think a council meeting or is one-
Well, I was suggesting Paula's committee, if there was one in time, as being an appropriate place,
Yeah,
but
Councillor Paula.
Your first one's the 27th of February.
well, look. Oh, sorry, can I just finish that? I just think somewhere reference back to councillors, even if it's an informal workshop.
Question, if I may have it, is that given that we're going out with some much larger thing in around about the same time next year, being the LTP, I think the public will be quite busy responding to that. Is it vital that it does go in February, or can it not come to my Community and Services Committee in February for an early out next year sometime? Because, you know, let's be real, people are going to be focused very much on the LTP and the rates and those
So
kind of
could I
things.
just ask the Democracy Manager, from my understanding is we've just voted with dates included in what we voted for, unless we bring this back and there's no further information being presented to bring it back, the dates are locked down.
I think I wouldn't have
Democracy
voted in
Manager.
that case.
So we can't go back now and talk date, that needed to be a amendment to go up on the board before we voted.
sorry, can I just clarify something, Chair? So in terms of the resolution that we have just passed, that includes, so the statement of proposal is on page 68, 69. So that is the consultation document essentially. So that is the statement of proposal that goes out to the public.
Statements of proposal do not have to include all the information that goes there. That can be an extra, and we've done that lots of times, provided extra material.
So I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that is what is being presented as the statement of proposal to go out to public consultation.
So I think, Sean,
That's what's been resolved.
both sides of this discussion have asked for further information to go out with the consultation document. So I think it's not unreasonable for staff to bring together further information to go out with the consultation document as attachments to that document. And we're getting this from both sides of the vote, so I don't think so. Yeah, so we'll just can we just take a couple of minutes out? Document, but we once again, Sean and your team, could you please bring together further information to go with the proposal when it goes out for consultation? So we've voted on the proposal when we voted on the time frame, but we're asking you and your team to bring through further information that will be helpful to the consultation document.
Yes, that's fine. So do you want me to bring that back to a council meeting?
No, we just want you to put that together, information that would be helpful to go out as an attachment with the consultation document.
Sure.
And could you circulate that to members first for feedback?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess I had probably a question is, do you essentially delegating that to the Chief Executive, or do you want to have a working group or some sort of party of elected members to vet that, I guess is a question.
I'm just asking you to put information together that will be helpful to the consultation document, which is locked down now, So that when it goes out, there's information that will be helpful to the public when it goes out, and I'm asking you to circulate that to members first for feedback before you send it out with the consultation document.
Sure.
Thank you.
Be recorded in the minutes, and that is, was the amendment not successful, or was the amendment lost by virtue of the chair using his casting vote?
Yeah, which is essentially the same thing. So the
No,
initial vote was
I'm
tied.
asking how it's going to be recorded in the
It will
minutes.
be recorded as showing that the casting vote was used as a
So
matter
the
of
amendment
record.
was lost.
So the amendment was lost, and then we moved to the motion, which was subsequently ratified.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to item 10, page 109. Thank you. Can we take the report as read? Yes, you can. Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions on the staff recommendation. It's actually different, isn't it, than the recommendation that was put to the finance meeting?
There was an addition made at the Finance Committee meeting, yes, that's correct. So this reflects...
I've got two additions. Can I just ask questions about those?
Yes, sure.
The first addition that I saw was in the staff recommendation under Part A, on the basis that the shareholding agreements in the new subsidiary do not inhibit council's ability to sell its shares in future.
Yes.
How from a practical point of view will we record that, so that we have got that protection?
So this resolution will be formally, I'll then formally write to the chair and the board of the company to inform them this is our position. You had the representatives from the company here for discussion as well, so they fully understood the debate and they were very happy with this intent. So what they are intending is an investment into an associate, and they feel there will be no... The nature of the shareholding will not in any way affect our ability to sell in the future. So,
Okay.
but it would be a formal letter from myself to the company.
And under Part E, we've got that the CE investigate and report to council an exit strategy. Is there a timeline for that? You know, I understand we've got certain date. 2020 being the date when we could pursue that. But is there a timeline now for the CE to investigate that exit strategy, or will that happen after 2020?
No, I would envisage it'll be a piece of work that, through the Chief Executive, I'll work on next year. But ultimately, we know from our early work with Crow Howarth and Innovation Park that the 2020 date is the earliest possible date we can actually consider a sale. But I would like to, in the course of next year, bring that work back to Council for some further discussion.
Councillor Pascoe, it was discussed at the finance meeting, and that Blair would focus on the sale first, then move to looking at the exit strategy straight after that.
Okay, I wasn't aware that it actually got encompassed into that motion, but it did it? Both those changes were actually added to the motion?
Yes, they were.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the motion. Okay, thank you.
This is the revised motion.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. And just picking up on what Rob was saying, and I'm not so au fait with company secretary type positioning. So in terms of that, nothing would inhibit council's ability to sell the shares if and when we wanted to. Can I just tease out a few things? So that would mean that the new spray dryer number 2 limited, or whatever it's called, there would be no guarantees from council of debts or anything like that. What are the sort of things that would need to be looked at or identified such that there was no barrier to us selling?
Look, I think there's certainly no suggestion at all, Gary, that there be any arrangements between council and this new proposed investment. So council is completely not involved to the extent that, apart from us being a shareholder in food.
Shareholder of the holding company of
Correct, yes.
Spray Dryer number 2.
So I think what this resolution is really referring to is some of the lessons or the learnings as we are going through the restructure process of Innovation Park at the moment, where, for example, Waikato Innovation Park has provided a guarantee to food. So this is saying to the board of food, don't set up those types of arrangements with this new entity.
Okay, my understanding was the two things that jumped in our way were the government funding.
Yes.
And that's not involved in Spray Dryer number 2 Limited.
No.
And the guarantees from one to the other.
That's correct.
And that would. So how does a council get surety that won't happen?
Well, first and foremost, as I say, I'll formally write to the board,
Okay.
and then I'll just keep regularly in touch with the board and the chief executive around that. I mean, if they go against the wishes of us as a shareholder, we have, I guess, remedies that we can take back through with the directors. But
can I just add there? So effectively, we can, if we have concern more than just the gentleman's agreement, we can actually effect changes to the constitution of the company, which absolutely prohibits certain transactions.
We'll only be a 10% shareholder of this.
Yep, but
we'll only be a 10% shareholder of this new company.
ultimately, as a shareholder of any percentage, we can request changes to the constitution and so forth. So, but that's the last step. But Blair will continue the process currently underway.
I'm reasonably comfortable we'll get there, but I just want to make sure we don't fall over at the last hurdle.
Certainly, Gary, I intend to stay very close to this transaction, and if there's anything of any concern, I'd bring it to your attention. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll move. Do we have a seconder? Councillor James. There's no debate. All those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Item 11. So this is introduced by Leanne Jordan, the Democracy Manager. So she's not the Democracy Manager during this discussion.
I think
because she can't do two jobs. She's introducing the paper and guiding the paper through, so it'll have to be Becca.
So I'm, just a.
But approve of the high duties allowance for Becca and danger pay.
So on one aspect of my split personality today. So, councillors, for your consideration is the proposed schedule of meetings for 2008. The things to note, I think, relate in point 5 of the report, which tells you the considerations that we took note of in forming the schedule. The key difference is that there has not been a specific effort to block out school holidays in their entirety, and that is primarily due to I think I can say the unintended consequence of what was an intensified committee cycle in this year. So we had an awful lot going on for staff, for elected members, and certainly for the governance team, although that wasn't our consideration, wasn't the primary driver here, because of having multiple meetings in a month. But happy to take any questions, and very happy to receive your feedback in terms of what will work for you next year. Thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Without going through and comparing them to the meeting schedule that we had this year, I can assume that there's no fewer meetings for finance and the other committee meetings than we've had this year.
That's correct. We've respected this.
So
6 weeks.
yeah, okay, and we have in there sufficient meetings to ensure that we don't have to have a number of meetings in December as a catch-up.
That's correct. The additional meetings this year, as you'll be aware, our schedule has become has expanded because of the 10-year plan.
Appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
In saying that, there is always the possibility that meetings are going to be added. We can't see the future, so we are not aware of what reasons we may need extra meetings.
We don't know what we don't know.
I understand that, Chair. I know in recent years, though, we've often had a plethora of meetings in December as a kind of a catch-up, because we've needed to have those, not just of council meetings, but also of the other committee meetings too.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, I think we do know what we don't know, in the sense that I'm surprised we've got, I think it's a really good setup here, except it's missing the briefings that we're inevitably going to be trying to shovel in at the last minute with unforeseen things. And I think we should be looking at a briefing sort of session every second week, to be honest. Just put in there, it's much easier to cancel one that's in the diary than to try and add one 2 weeks out. So my only suggestion is go through it, and there's, for instance, I think it's April, I noticed didn't have any at all. I just think you're nuts if you don't put that in there, not you, but us, because we're inevitably going to need them or be useful for things. Even if we have to have an emergency council meeting, we know there's a time, you know, that's in people's diary. So go for that, I would say.
So can I suggest that Democracy take this away, leave the program how they've got it, bring it back to the next council meeting with extra briefings programmed in for us to vote on?
May I make a suggestion?
Vote on. We want to get this lot in as soon as we can. And add the additional ones could come at the next meeting.
At the next meeting? Okay.
Just to be clear, we are talking about adding extra briefings.
Briefings,
Right,
yes.
so the formal meetings would be probably locked as is.
Yeah.
Of course, you can always do an extraordinary one anyway.
Yeah, but it's hard to get the bloody time.
Yep, I agree.
If I might reflect back, so what I'm hearing you say is approve as is, noting that probably at least 2 briefings per month, which would work about the every second week you're talking about, Councillor McPherson, be added, and we could circulate a revised version after we've populated those. Would that be
Could
okay?
you work on a motion on that?
Yeah, just say subject to...
Councillor Ange.
Yeah, agree with Councillor McPherson on that. And we don't need to have extra briefings come to the December report. We don't need to move those, because we can put a meeting in at any time as long as we meet the requirements. So just bring them back. I spoke to Mayor Andrew yesterday, last night, about, and I've raised this many times before, about, I know we're not, I think, Leanne, you're working on the standing orders, but being able to have 4 clear working days for agendas for elected members. And the reason that I keep raising this is that we have the least amount of time with the tool, the only tool that we have to make a decision. And actually this term, I think apart from once, it's been a massive improvement. But 3 days is still not long enough. And there are 2 committee meetings in the schedule that are straight after a long weekend, and there's a couple of weeks here where there are 2 committee meetings. Now, with the responsibilities that the chairs have, with the responsibilities of events and all of the other things that we do, I am still not happy that we still only get 3 clear working days. So, Mayor Andrew, I asked you to have a think about that and perhaps raise that with
I've passed it on
Leanne.
to the Democracy Manager.
So what can we do about that?
Might ask the CE to respond, but governance is certainly happy to accommodate that, and I fully understand your reasoning for it. My observation would be turnaround times vary across councils, but a number have 5 clear working days.
5 clear working days would be wonderful.
To be honest, that would be quite a shift for council at the moment, but it's really a question of how you feel the rest of the organisation's able to respond.
Well, I can't sit here and make a reflection on how the organisation's going to feel without putting some thought to it. There will be some compromises both ways in terms of religiously, in terms of the lead time for preparing reports. So can I do some work on that? I think we need to focus on that. And when we do the standing orders, we'll factor that in.
Because with respect, the 13 members in this room are the customer of that report, and we only get 3 working days.
I'm not challenging
Yeah.
that. What I'm saying is a lot of the... So firstly, this calendar will go a long way to supporting that, because effectively what was happening is a lot of people working on multiple reports, multiple committees at the same time, and so that caused a delay. So tidying up the calendar to make sure we avoid the situation where we have clashes like you're suggesting is great. The other aspect is that we've got to be a little bit more open with our assessment how long it's going to take to prepare a report, so that we give ourselves enough time in the diaries. There's some things I need to look at to make sure that we build for success and look for solutions. So I just can't give you the answers now, Councillor O'Leary.
I do want a real honest attempt to make this happen. Otherwise, in the new year or in the December meeting, I will simply move a motion. Obviously, I might lose it to make that happen because, as I said, we are always the last cab off the rank, and 3 working days is just not enough with other commitments. And I've been raising this for 10 years.
Yep, and so, I mean, I'm feeling a degree of hostility towards staff in terms of not responding. I'm not being
No, please take that back, Richard. That's absolutely not what I said.
I apologise for that. But I'm telling you that I'm going to go away and make this work, but there's going to be some changes required to achieve that, and I'll be bringing back what those changes are to achieve it.
You just agree to it.
Sorry?
The only other issue that I have, and I've raised this over a number of years as well, is if you look in, where am I, June?
Yeah, but I need more resource to do it.
Now, we adopt either the annual plan or the long-term plan. Usually, it's on the 30th of June, our last council meeting. Now, and it has to be legally accepted on that day because it's in effect in 1st of July. Again, this is last cab off the rank concerns for me. If you look at May, there's 10 days of hearings. There is 1 day for this 10-year budget booked for deliberations, just one. And then a month later, 1 working day before we finish that month is adoption. That is 2 days of discussions once we've heard from our members of the public, and 2 days for us to make a decision. So why that, and why have we always historically as well had an adoption day where basically it's a fait accompli and elected members can't make any other changes, and we're forced into a position where we'll actually the next day or the day after that we're legally bound to accept it? Why do we do it that way?
There's probably 2 answers to that. One answer to that is probably routine over a period of time. So you probably find we've always done it that way, which is not an excuse. That's just a reason. There's probably another aspect as well that even though the auditors come in and audit the consultation document, they've also got to sign off the final version as well. So it's about trying to manage timelines. I'm not using auditors as an excuse, but just making sure we manage those timelines. I think we'll go away and work out whether or not we can slide another meeting in there. The key to having it as late as possible as well is that we try to assess our rates right up to the 11th hour, and that's the date of our rate strike. And so what we do is we try to make sure that our growth from our rating assessment is as high as possible, as late as possible, so that we get all the growth for the city. So that's the other reason we do it as late as possible, so to make sure we capture that as well. Because that's the key part to our rates number, is all that new growth that's going to come on from 1st of July.
So possibly the key issue I'm raising, if I accept that, is that we only have 1 date in this program for deliberations, 1 day for 10-year plan deliberations after hearings.
No, I think actually you've raised a really good point. I'm explaining why that date's there. I'm going to go away and look for some other alternatives to actually put another valve in there for us to have the conversations, which is going to put the team under some pressure. We need to work out what that looks like.
But we're the decision makers at the end of the day, which I know you know, and so what we do is critical.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going to find some more time in there. Yep.
Okay.
So could we add that to the motion?
I don't think we need to add it to the motion.
I don't think we need to add it. We'll note it for the minutes that the request was made, and certainly, as you can see in the calendar, there are dates available. So it's really just a case of working back with the strategy.
Part of the other challenge is making sure we start the consultation at the right time, so we finish it at the right time and so forth. So we've got to work back from a reasonable date and just make sure we line everything else up. It's just a program management exercise, which I'm going to probably insult some staff by that statement, but yes, we pretty well much what it is.
And could I also ask Democracy to block out extra days for citizenship ceremonies, because there are extra ceremonies that were put in this year, and we know full well that next year the same thing's going to happen. So if we could just put in some reserve days, There would be maybe one every second month.
Absolutely.
And we may well not use it, but it would be useful.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
We're going to adopt this, and then obviously there'll be a supplementary circulation once we've sorted out about some workshops, citizenships, etc. I actually want to thank the very excellent governance team for putting this program together. It is
Hang on,
very...
we're not in debate yet, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, okay.
We're still on questions.
And in,
May I, the question I have is, may I thank people? But I will wait.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by myself. Martin, you can debate.
I want to thank the very excellent governance team for putting this together. I strongly suspect in dream time at night, I'm sure some of you dreamed about this wretched thing, but to get all this, it's like the classic jigsaw puzzle and putting it all together. So I don't underestimate a massive piece of work that is, and obviously any organisation still has to accept it has to be nimble, and if an issue arises or a dynamic arises or there's a legitimate reason why a meeting has to be slightly later, then you adapt. Any organisation, and also reflect, you have an ideal, be it a hospital board, be it a parliament, be it a major private company, that a paper is available at such and such a date, but there's also a moving kaleidoscope of information which actually influences that report. So there will be some reports that will actually land closer to a meeting than is ideal, but that's actually having, with respect, some nimbleness. And while I don't disagree with Councillor O'Leary's plea, I want to ensure that our staff get to enjoy a thing called Saturday and a Sunday. Because, you know, if we believe in being fair employers, I think there's a context that we do ask what is reasonable. Little less understanding with the Chief Executive, obviously, but certainly the rest of the staff, I would hold to that. But I just want to thank staff for this. This is, and the other thing too, I noticed there's going to be a heap of work for you guys to start doing the electronic entries, and I do appreciate that work as well. Thank you.
Right of reply, Deputy Mayor.
No, he's done.
Okay, all those for, any against, carried unanimously. Okay, we now move to item 7, page 18. I'll move. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor James. Councillor... I also, as part of this Chair's report, we will table the letter from the Ministry of Justice that has been circulated to all members.
Ahead of some of us, I didn't know. So are we straight into debate now? Are we?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, beg your pardon. You're not.
Chris needs to give them an update on their remember.
Okay. So before we start, I'll just get Chris to give us an update on Hillsborough Terrace. There is an amendment to the staff recommendation on this one.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. So, look, we've been in regular contact with the IM Martin Family Trust since the last meeting, and the neighbours next door. There have been several meetings between the trust and the neighbours. The net result is that the IM Trust have decided to withdraw their request for us to close the road. So they don't believe that they can satisfy all the neighbour expectations and have a successful development. So I have it in writing that they've thanked us for our consideration of it, but they do not want to proceed any further.
So there will be an amended staff recommendation that will go on the board now on that one. So members can see, or if you could read it out if that's quicker, Becca.
Yeah, so the council notes that no decision is required on Hillsborough Terrace road stopping report as at the request of the developer has been withdrawn.
And the other amendment to this report is the 9th floor balustrade. We now have a quote in for this at $25,000. So if we can just change 25,000. So we can change the 40 to 25.
No, the 40,000 was my number originally when we did an estimate, and we've since got a formal quote on it.
So, and there is a 10% contingency attached to that should things be more difficult. Included, sorry, yeah. So it could be up or down by 10%. It could be up or down by 10%.
25,000 includes 10%.
Yes, it does. So the maximum should be 25,000.
Yep. Sorry. Thank you. Yep. Okay. We'll start with Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Question just on that one then, on page 20 on the balustrade. Richard, why does this have to be unfunded? What's the budget for maintenance and renewal of the 9th floor or any floor in the building? Why can't we just do it out of that budget?
Well, the renewal, we don't have a significant maintenance budget, so it won't cover that, and it's not a maintenance item, it's a capital item, so we can't use the maintenance budget. And our renewals budget didn't include the replacement of the balustrade for a number of years, so we don't have a budget for that either. So for me, that's the reason I'm bringing it here, is that there's effectively no kitty we can take it out of. From an overall point of view, I hope to balance up the total budget to balance, and so we'll cover there won't be a deficit in terms of our total capital budget because of this item, but there's no specific line item supporting it, so effectively I don't have a budget, it's unbudgeted. I could approve it within my delegated authority, but it's not, and it relates to civic matters more than operating of the building, so I wanted to make sure the council had an oversight of it.
So if you wanted, I'm sure we do this all over the city, where we change the colour of the walls of the outside of a toilet at a park. That's not capital, that would be maintenance or renewal.
No, we're
What's the difference?
paintings.
Hang on, can I come in here? I asked for this to be done. It's ridiculous that I take people from all over the world up onto the top floor of our building to show them the view, and right in the eye line of your view is a 300mm wide block that you either have to stand on a chair to take a photo, or you have to get on your knees to take a photo through the glass. I specifically asked Richard for it. Richard said, sure, put it in the chair's report. Yes, of course, this is inside Richard's delegated authority, but this was specifically requested by myself.
Mayor Andrew, I support you. I'm challenging the CE. Why isn't it coming out of his budget? Why is it unfunded capital?
I don't have budget for it, Councillor. That's pretty simple. I just don't have the money for it.
So
So put it this way: if there's an item in maintenance, we've robbed Peter to play Paul within Lance's parks budget, or Chris can balance up within his roading budget or pipes budget. When it comes to the 9th floor, we don't have a significant capital program for the 9th floor, so I have nothing to rob Peter to pay Paul from. If we did, I could do that, but that's just the nature of it. We don't have huge budgets for the building. We have the major renovations in terms of renewals, like for carpets and elevators and for the roof and so forth like that. If we were to repair this, well, in fact, it doesn't need to be replaced from an asset management plan point of view. What is there is fit for the original purpose, and this is probably a change in level of service expectation, which I still don't have the budget to achieve.
what I find very frustrating is that in the finance report, in the finance meeting the other week, you can pop in there $500,000 of risks and opportunities for reports and growth and things like that, and we can't find $25,000.
Well, sorry, Councillor, we intended to do it the same way as we did for that. We want to quarter on risk and opportunities, but I think, can I go back and explain this? So firstly, from a total budget point of view, it won't even show up in risk and opportunities. I'll find some money from somewhere in the organisation to do it.
Okay, so that's what I need to know.
Yeah, so I'll find some money from somewhere in the organisation. The issue I've got is that from an accountability and a governance point of view, I don't have a specific line item that says I've got enough money to do a balustrade on the 9th floor. So I just want the clarity with council to know that I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul across the entire organisation.
Yeah.
To fund it.
I don't want to debate with you. I just find it very frustrating that something as simple as this, where people can see a great view of the city, where Mayor Andrew takes lots of delegates up there, possibly some of them are funders, that something as immaterial to the financial budget as $25,000 isn't has become such a debate. But anyway, I'll park that one. The embassy toilets on page 19, this will be Lance or Chris question. So why did we close those? Why did we close them over those hours initially? Was it safety concerns?
I think it was originally when we had the other toilets there. They probably weren't the best configuration and the best looking, and I think the work that the Trust's done with the container toilet and looking at some of the septic principles, it's actually better now. So, and that's why the hours were reduced. So this is actually just suggesting that, you know, feedback we've had from the community around that, especially on those late nights where, you know, people do need to use facilities. So that was the main reason.
Okay,
there was some cuts to cleaning contracts back in the 2012 LTP, but we generally did that using the information we had on toilets that weren't used particularly well, but this is mainly around the type of toilet that we had there versus the one we've got there now.
So this is 4,400 annually. It's not 25,000. So which budget's this coming out of? You'll find the money?
Like the other one, this will go on risks and opportunities.
All right, I'll have to save that conversation for finance. All right, so, and Lance, just one other question you may or may not know, I don't know, or Calvin. Well, just to avoid, even though they're new toilets, just to avoid some of the issues of people sleeping there or doing a deal in there over that busy nighttime activity, will we have City Safe going in there and checking them out? Do they do that with public toilets now?
Well, they don't specifically patrol public toilets, no, but they patrol that area, and there's a heightened presence of the City Safe staff at that time.
Yeah, okay, all right. So just, it would be, I mean, the Trust has spent a lot of money and done a lot of work, so it'd be a shame to have a negative element in there.
Business as usual for them.
And the lighting's better there too.
Yeah, it is, yeah. That's all my questions, thank you.
Councillor Rob.
Thanks, Chair. I also support the balustrade replacement. My question, which I think follows on from Councillor Angela's comments, is if we've made savings in the Capital Works program, I assume that no other project will suffer as a result of this spend to do this work. Is my interpretation of those words correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second question is around the elected members policy, and I guess I'm just seeking an interpretation of the words. And the clarity is, if the threshold is exceeded in any 1 week, that is the 80 kilometres have been driven by the councillor on council business, then we go back to the first kilometre insofar as the reimbursement is concerned, or do we reimburse from the 81st kilometre? I know that there are the right words there, but I just wanted to get clarity that my reading of that is correct.
And if you'll allow me to explain my intention, and we'll see whether that matches with your question, just so that I don't mislead. This basically has come back because our original wording was clumsy, and we wanted to tidy up after a clarification actually from the Deputy Mayor. So the intention originally was to remove the prohibition on claiming travel within the city boundary. So we wanted to enable elected members to claim travel when they travel within the city, provided that that travel is beyond travel to and from home. So the 80 kilometres...
From here to home.
Yes. So the 80 kilometres is intended to ensure that there's a threshold by which councillors take responsibility for their own kilometrage from work to home and home to work. Yeah. Over and above that, within the city, that you came from the 81st kilometre. But the wording was clumsy, and what it inadvertently did was suggested that if, irrespective of what mileage I do in town, I have to go to Taupo for a meeting on council business, that I would have to forego the first 80 k's. Now, that was not and is not the intention. Any travel outside the city boundaries you claim from kilometre 1 any travel within the city boundaries you claim from kilometre 81.
Okay. I just wonder if the word threshold to me still means, and I could be wrong here, and there'll be some English teachers here who might direct me otherwise. But I thought the threshold was was all or nothing. So once you achieved that threshold, you either gained the whole claim, or if it was the other way around, you lost everything once you exceeded the threshold. So I just wonder if that wording is still a little bit clumsy, but that's just my reading of it.
I'm very happy to entertain a additional wording. From my perspective, which is easy because I wrote the wording, but from my perspective, it says very clearly from a policy perspective that in 3, it does not apply outside for any travel outside the city. Which brings us back to...
No, I understand that part. I'm thinking more of the 80 kilometres within the city in a period of 1 week. But your intention is quite clearly that the first 80 kilometres of travel within the city is non-reimbursable, is private, and then it's the 81 onwards that would be reimbursed on a weekly start-up and finish basis. Okay. All right. I understand that now. And my last question is on the Carrow Street right turn. I'm not unsupportive of the recommendation, but I'm hoping that as part of the report that comes back, that staff do still have the history of the frequent and serious crashes that did occur on that intersection when the right-hand turn was available, as I do remember. And I had some friends who were involved in a very serious crash simply because there's a certain element of racing that goes on between the two sets of traffic lights, and I see that intersection as being in some ways similar, although not the same, as the Gordonton Road right-hand turn. So I'm not speaking against the recommendation, but I'm hoping that the report will have that past history of events that did happen on that intersection, and there were a large number of them, as I recall.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Yes, I presume I'm a sceptic of number 2, so I might vote in a different direction. Just the question, but having said that, just Richard, do you confirm that our professional staff will be unfettered when they return a report back to Council around the road safety aspects of that particular proposal?
Yes.
Thank you. Can the Mayor and Governance Manager confirm with regard to recommendation number 6 that both the current Mayor and the previous Mayor host through the year a significant range of community groups, including even Councillor Leary with the Whitiora school kids, so that there is significant local benefit in terms of the 9th floor being accessible to members of the community in various functions that where local Hamiltonians can enjoy a view from the building that they have paid for over the years?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
I'd like to commend, as I start to question the Mayor for bringing some of these minor items to the Council, because in the past they've just been done and then we've read about them in the newspapers on many occasions. It's much better to have it out in the open like this. But could I request that item 2 actually, is it 2? Yeah, be Carrow Street right turn, be included in the list of ones that are being looked at, traffic changes coming up soon. I think it might be next week, Angela, when the hearings are on. So I just think if we do it as an individual one-off thing here, we're sort of saying, well, the ones the Mayor puts up jumping ahead of everything else. I think we've got an opportunity to stick it in with the others.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, the wording, I supplied the wording, is to include it in the first suite of proposed changes in the traffic bylaw registers in 2018. So the one next week it's a bylaw issue, and we have to
okay.
go through full consultation. Our bylaw specifies who we've got to consult with. There's specified stakeholders, so we can't bring it through in the next suite of changes, but we'll put it in the very first one early in the new year.
Sure,
Yep.
that's fine. And further to Rob's request about safety issues, my recollection, it was more of a congestion issue because of the throat of the road there. Anyone trying to turn right was holding up multiple people wanting to turn left, and that would have to be addressed as well as any safety issues. So that the report should cover that aspect too.
And
that was sort of quite a significant problem.
And buses turning left off Anglesey that have to go right into the middle lane to get across both lanes. So there's a whole look at that whole intersection that will go with this.
Definitely.
And I see somebody's kindly turned a sign upside down in the meantime, so you're not allowed to turn left, but you're allowed to turn right at the moment.
Your worship?
I'm not saying anything.
I did have some questions on item 6, the 9th floor balcony balustrade replacement. And just reference that, say, would it be fair for Councillor Mallett to be worried that if the balustrade's not there, he won't be able to hide from Ms Elvina Barrett when she's yelling at him from down the bottom? And the second one that Councillor James and I both thought about was if there's no 30 centimetre wide balustrade there, where will we put our drinks when we're leaning over chatting with people? There's no nowhere to put them if it's just a glass wall there.
We brought this item.
Anyway. Ones we brought up ourselves.
We brought this item to council for this valuable input, Councillor Dave. We're going to install cup holders.
But slightly more seriously.
Excuse me, Councillor Dave. You could get an amendment up to put drink holders on the new balustrade.
I'll support that amendment.
I will recommend that the fridge always be stocked with booze.
I will supply drink holders.
Slightly more seriously, are we talking about replacing the entire balustrade all the way round, or just in a segment?
So basically, the quote I've received is from the one netting to the other netting. So basically, from outside, what is the governance manager's office, the far end of that, to what's outside my EA's office, the far end of that side. So walking out, the entire area you can access where you can walk out to that balcony at the moment.
Because I have noticed that we've got a couple of spare armoured glass former doors that were removed from that floor that are put sideways, might provide the segment there at much lower cost.
We're making sure that this is appropriately engineered and the suitable equipment is put in place, because I'd hate for any of our valuable members of our community or our elected members to inadvertently fall off. So I'm doing best to keep...
Those that have been pushed.
Okay.
And also making sure that during my performance review I don't end up on the balcony.
That's very good, thank you. The ALA letter, when's that being discussed? As part of this? Or?
Yes, this is a part of this report.
So are we...
So I have asked for the letter to be tabled.
Yes, sure. I was just wondering if we could have comments from the General Manager responsible for that area about that, because I understand that there's some disagreement that letter's, or some thought that this letter's not accurate.
That is correct. That letter is not accurate. So you recall we reported back to you in June, which was when the resolution was asked for to write to the government. And at that time we were aiming for September. That was our aim, and then that was pulled back. We reported that same report that we were then looking in December. Given in December was when we were given the December date. That was a clash for our council and our legal representation. And so that's the only two dates we've been given.
And did we turn down the December date, or did they?
Yeah, and they know, when they suggested that date to us first up, our council said those dates won't, because he is they have a 3-day clash and environment court. So he had already notified that those dates wouldn't work, and was there other negotiations around it between all parties. So that was notified early on, maybe we reported this in June. And we've got our correspondence back and forth between the two groups.
So the official letter from the Ministry of Justice, the government department, saying it's our fault as a council for not accepting those dates, apart from one of the dates, is not true. Are we challenging their statement? I mean, it just seems we've been trying hard to get a date. They've given us one choice, which was not possible, and the rest of it's all, I'm not allowed to say bullshit, am I? Not true.
In the era. So we will write back, given we only got
At variance from the truth.
last night, we will write back to them and actually clarify our view on what the. But I think the point that you were all making is we've been going through this journey. We were initially looking at September and it's been ongoing. So the time issue around getting a hearing isn't just about whether they have given us 2 days or not, which clearly they haven't. It's about the duration of trying to get any hearing, and then now they've been telling us that it won't be till April, which is I think the last verbal update we gave you. So that issue of the duration that the Mayor has written to on your behalf is still a valid issue that hasn't been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Mayor Andrew, just following on from Councillor Dave about, isn't that glass below the balustrade, isn't that already safety glass?
Yeah, so it is safety glass. But
And is it not high enough?
that's the challenge, it's not high enough, so it's the extension up above, so...
Really? Oh, okay. Well, I'm grateful if it does, the balustrade does come away.
Personally, I don't have an issue with the current top of the balustrade.
Okay. Another just the other thing I just want to say, I want to support Deputy Mayor Gallagher for opening the 9th floor to the public again, because we should be accessible to the public. So is there any possibility to do that?
In terms of removing the access from the lift?
Yeah.
No, there's, from a security point of view, not. But we, from a position we've done, from a staff point of view, we do host a lot of things up there. If members of the public want to meet with councillors up there, we'll make that happen. We've removed the doors getting in, as you're aware, into the 9th floor so that staff can come up. Staff didn't have access to the 9th floor, which we discovered. I discovered I didn't have access to the 9th floor, and when I found out that I wasn't the only one. We've now given access to staff to come to the 9th floor as well at any stage as well, and do that. So there's managing realities of security overall and so forth, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So could we ask staff to look at why, once you're above the ground floor, you need to use a swipe card? And if you could just look at that and report back, because I don't see, once you're in the system, why you need to use a swipe card each and every time. So when someone's on the 3rd floor wants to come back to the 9th floor, what is the reason for using a swipe card? Mainly because, and even we do this on the 9th floor, Mr Mayor, we don't escort everyone out. And so once they make to the elevators, they'll then have free access to the rest of the building. And so the theory behind it is that unless we're prepared to change all our practices and ensure that we escort everyone out back down to the ground floor when they leave the building, which takes effort, that's the reason for that.
I think what we've arrived at now with removing those barriers, I think we've arrived at a compromise, which is good. But with respect, I think we've got to be very acutely aware of the safety of our staff. And it's only a minority, but it only takes 1 in 1,000 for a bad consequence.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. Just recommendation number 1, the Clark Lounge. In point A, you finishes off without incurring additional costs. What additional cost could be? So like an alcohol food type cost, is that what you're talking about?
No, it may well be that a deal could be struck with and it has happened previously, where a promoter wants the entire access to the entire area, including all the corporate boxes, and it may be that they say, well, we can have them back if you buy them back off us. We want full view. What Mayor Andrew is suggesting here is no, there are hours and there are hours for all situations for corporate hosting, and they're not part of any deals with any promoters or anything to that effect. So that's what effect with that cost aspect's referring to, if I'm correct, Mr Mayor.
What's just happened, Gary, is that we ended up having to buy our own lounge back off Rugby World Cup League when the stadium wasn't even full.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's what alerted me to this, and it is the councillor's Clark Lounge, and there for hosting purposes, and we just don't want to get caught by that a second time.
Okay, I got you. I wasn't aware of that, thank you. Which game?
Both games.
Oh.
Hasn't that in the past been part of that deal? It's a bit like FIFA, and I mean, they...
That, you're correct, Councillor Ange. We have, as part of the package, and based on certain types of events, when there are events of national significance, like the Rugby World Cup, basically we've got to take sponsorship down, we've got to make sure we remove all rights to use of corporate boxes and make them available for the promoters and so forth like that. The likelihood of us getting an event of that size in the next wee while is not huge. And that's why there's the out in terms of the Chief Executive and the Mayor signing it off. Yeah. So that provides the opportunity if one of those significant national events do come along that we, as part of that, there's a specific piece of legislation that governs that. But I think it's Sean unfortunately couldn't stay around for this item, he had to head off, but he's supportive of this recommendation. Yeah.
Central government legislation would override anything that we decide in this chamber for international events. Yeah. Councillor Paula.
Thank you. All of that makes sense. Partly asked that last question for me that Gary asked. Is there a policy anywhere? Don't have to look at it right now. Is there a policy anywhere about how the lounge is used? I know we have access to it. Is there any kind of, or is that just purely at the discretion of the Mayor, the CE, as to how it gets used on any given time? And for example, whether some hospitality in the way of light food might, or what have you, might be provided. Is that just a purely discretional thing, or is there actually some kind of policy that informs that?
I'll answer that. When I became Mayor, I stopped all lunches, all morning teas, apart from snacks, just to keep us going. If our blood sugars get low, I expect us to go and buy our own lunches, like everyone else in this building does, the other 1,000 staff. And it's the same with the Clark Lounge. The Clark Lounge is used for games which take no more than 2 hours, and I think it's misuse of council money. I believe that I can still entertain in that lounge with just tea and coffee and water available, and I don't believe that I need food to enhance the experience. I believe it's a great experience to be in a corporate box for entertaining guests without having to have food available. I believe us as Mayor and councillors are actually no different from anybody else. It's just we've put ourselves up for leadership, and we've put ourselves forward, and what makes us important is the position. It doesn't make us important, it's the position that we hold. And we've got to be very careful that we don't think we're something special. It's a position we hold that's special, not us as people. We're here to represent the people of this city, and we have to be very careful with the money that we're spending on things that directly relate back to ourselves, outside of our salaries, which are set independently. And
there is a policy in terms of the use of the lounge, and that's at my discretion.
That's what I wanted to know. I understand the Mayor's views on it. I just wanted to know whether there was a policy. I mean, it was there's a difference between having some of the councillors and a few guests than, say, having someone of the status of the Governor General or the Prime Minister, or somebody really important from an overseas dignitary. I presume at that stage you'd still have the discretion to provide some light food. And I'm not talking about a really big eat and lots of alcohol. I'm talking about the ability to provide something light and sufficient in those instances, because I do think on occasion there is a need for that.
There is coffee, Coke and chips directly outside the door, within 10 metres of the lounge.
I wouldn't serve chips to the Prime Minister if they came and visited me in a rugby box, but I'm just saying.
I believe he'd appreciate
pretty nice
fish and chips.
But it's not the point.
Oh, she would, sorry.
Pardon?
I corrected myself. I believe that she would appreciate chips and Coke.
You'd buy them though, wouldn't you, Mr Mayor? Thank you anyway.
Okay, so I'll move, seconded by the Deputy Mayor.
Are we taking the recommendations?
No.
Everything.
Yeah, debates, yeah, yep. Councillor Leo.
You're doing the whole thing, aren't you?
Yep.
Item 2 here, which is Carrow Street right-hand turn. The history of this, of course, occurred in the late 80s when, and I'm very familiar with this because of the black spot which had been generated there with people having to cross 4 lanes of traffic. In those days, of course, there was no traffic signals at the car park for people to turn into, and it may well be that speeds on Anglesey Street are a little bit slower now than they were back in the late 80s. The late Peter Bilby in those days was the transportation manager for Hamilton City Council, and it was a combined effort between myself and him that the no right turn was implemented. The question I ask is, of course, and I have observed elected members making the prohibited right turn. I've observed members of the public making the prohibited right turn. And yes. And the question I ask is, if a few people fail to stop at a stop sign, do we actually take that stop sign out? And the answer is no. If a few people exceed the speed limit, do we actually do away with the speed limit? And the answer is no. As a result of that, I'd be totally opposed to the removal of that no right-hand turn. And I think what it is, particularly as elected members, I think we must show leadership within our community. And I definitely believe it's a poor look when I see an elected member actually flouting the legislation by actually making that prohibited right-hand turn. So if this, I will actually be voting against that part of your Chair's report.
Okay, so we'll take each one of these items separately, just to make it very... No. Well, yeah, okay, we'll do 2 votes, one for that one and one for the rest. Okay. Deputy Mayor Martin.
I'm happy to second that still to get it up on for a democratic vote, but I have to say on that issue, I totally agree with Leo, and I certainly take he's reminded me of the wonderful streets engineer, the late Peter Bilby, who was a very wonderful person and very visionary, and I do agree with Leo, and frankly, if people break a law, I don't think they should be indicators to affect our changing on them. In fact, I hope they get nabbed because the law's there for a clear reason. I just want to perhaps say that I think overall it's a good report, and it's good that we're getting some of this stuff. It means that we can respond to some issues in real time with adequate notice, and I think that's where a mayoral report of the day is good. 9th floor, I think we just need to, as I said before, stress that there's a considerable community use, and I know around things near the Christmas parade that, you know, there's open days and there's things like that, because we in this city don't have like in Auckland, you know, so-called Sky Tower, a high building where kids can come up and see the geography of this city and see the wonderful beauty of Hamilton. And so I'm really wanting that if we, you know, do that, it's not seen as some sort of luxury item. It's actually going to be there for real community benefit in the long term, because it will increase, you know, with the right work. There's great opportunities, in my view, you know, for school groups and you know, within reason, in certain days, certain times, to try and maximise that community benefit. And also the fact is that while the Mayor of the Day's office and the councillors of the Day's office is up on that 9th floor, this is a community building. This is owned by all of the people of Hamilton, and it's really great if we seek opportunities that all of the people, you know, not all at one time obviously, but people of Hamilton have an opportunity at time to enjoy that. And I acknowledge you and Julie, because you have hosted, you have had open days up there. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, look, two things. I'll speak to the Carrow Street right turn proposal. I don't think you should be worried about this step in the process. I think any member of the public, including the Mayor, has got the right to propose a change to our traffic bylaws for any intersection or stretch of road. It's then when the staff investigate that and bring a report back, and it's considered like every other proposal for a change. I think that's the time to oppose it. To stop it being heard is not necessary and probably not the right democratic process. I've got some doubts about whether we should stop that there, both for safety and congestion reasons. But I'd like to hear them, for instance, staff, for instance, raise look at the point that you yourself raised about whether having the lights 100 metres north of there now, the new extra set of lights, has made a difference to speeds, whether it is safer or not. I think, and just put the normal process when you get a council or elected members sort of proposal for something like this is the right way to handle it, then everyone gets treated the same. If we were just voting to bring it in now, I would be voting against it, but to have a look at it, I would be supporting that. Just on the security side of things and the public using the 9th floor, those changes were made to the 9th floor access and the building access without any consultation with elected members, I'll point out, and certainly caused a lot of problems for us, and we were never given any say. It's good we've got some say here, but like Councillor Gallagher or someone that mentioned before, I think we've gone over the top with security in this building, which actually makes it a bit harder for people to do their work at times, staff and elected members and legitimate members of the public. I wouldn't mind seeing the whole thing rolled back a lot further, but I'm not going to push that now.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. Councillor Tooman's absolutely right about the right turn, to be honest. If it is to be reviewed, it should be for the right reasons. The opening of the Central Business District toilets, well, to me that's absolutely a no-brainer. If you don't provide people enough public toilets late at night, we know where they do go to the toilet, and that's not much better. I just want to say, I thought when I read the elected members' support for travel, for a minute I thought, oh, there might be some, recompense for the fact that we drive our cars multiple different places across the city in any given day to attend things. But actually, we'll never see any of this money because we'll get to 80 kilometres in a week. But we, on a busy day you might get close, and so it's pretty meaningless an amount unless you are actually leaving town. In terms of the 9th floor balustrade, while I have some sympathy, I'm also opposed to death by 1,000 cuts, and there actually have been a number of small things like this, 40,000 here, 100,000 there, 20,000 here, that have occurred. And while it would be nice to look out, there is a lovely, that meeting, although it's very sunny, the one on the end which used to be attached to the Mayor's office before you moved to the other side, Mr Mayor, that has brilliant views, absolutely brilliant views. The Councillor Lounge has brilliant views towards Parongia, and actually, look, I probably won't vote against it because it's 40,000, but at the same time, it's what? It's 25. 25, even cheaper, then I definitely won't vote against it. But I make the note that, this is how budgets do get slowly eroded away, and it will be covered by savings in some other capital works. I'm always interested to know what dropped off when something else dropped in. Thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much, Mayor Andrew. Well, I just want to say something about the balustrade as well, or the 9th floor, and I am looking forward to having that gone because, for shorties, it's lovely to actually see the view. It's also nice to be outside because we have amazing views from the inside, but actually on the outside and having a bit of fresh air is quite lovely too. I've been to a few of these social events with people from overseas, and it's really nice to go outside because they might come from cities where it's smoke filled when they even go to the 9th floor, but we have actually fairly fresh air up there, which is lovely. And just opening it up to the public again, I remember years ago that I took a lot of visitors, overseas visitors, to the 9th floor when it was still open, and probably they closed it because of me. I came up there once too often, and for different reasons. But No, I didn't need to do that, Gary. I didn't need to do that. I didn't need.
Quiet, please. Let the member continue with her debate.
Yeah, but I just, hopefully, if it doesn't cost too much money, that we can open it up or have open days, more open days and things like that. So the public actually can see what an awesome city we have got and what a green city we have got, because you can't see all the trees from the bottom, but from up there you can actually see how wonderful green our city is. So yeah, I would love to see more access for the public. Thank you.
Councillor Ange.
Thanks, Andrew. Look, I wasn't going to say anything, but in terms of our security things, we do live in a new world, and it's not that long ago that unfortunately a staff member caused havoc in our community in Lance's area and put a lot of people, including police and bomb squad, on alert and caused some uncertainty. I don't want to see us, I know there's nothing here today, but after the conversation, some of the comments, I don't want us winding back any security that puts any one of our staff members at risk. This is not about us. If Mayor Andrew decided to move us all down to this bottom floor, I'd be happy to go there. But this is for me, this is about our people. And the concern that I have is when you've gone so far with security and you start rolling it back and something happens, you can't turn back that clock. So unfortunately it's 2018, it's the world we live in, and I can sleep at night knowing that we have security. It's not like we have armed guards downstairs, but we do have procedures in place that keeps all the 600-700 staff in this building safe and in a good work, because we're in government and we can be targeted through our staff. So I'd caution if there's going to be a report or anything coming forward that would put any of that at risk for our people.
I'll just, as a mover, I'll just take a right of reply on the Cora Street right to. All I'm doing here is putting this into the system, like everything else goes into the system. And I could have put this into the system and no one would have known where it came from. But I'm putting it into the system in a transparent way. So there's nothing underhand or there's no pressure involved here. This still goes through, engineers look at it. It still goes fully through Dave's department. All I've done is observed the behaviour on that intersection, noted that the underground car park used to come in through here and most of the cars used to feed out through Coro Street. Now that the entrance in and out of the car park has been moved and it's controlled by traffic lights, there are breaks into traffic and there is huge opportunity there to cross. So all I've done here is put this into a process, as we would with any of these things that come up, go into this. But because I've requested it, I've done it through this chair's report. So there's nothing underhand or nothing incorrect about this. This is just going into the normal process. So we'll go to the vote on that item first. So Cora Street right turn, we need a mover and a seconder for that. No, we haven't. We took that as the whole item. So I need a mover for the Cora Street right turn.
And that mover would be saying not to do this. No, right, surely because it's your report.
Okay, I'll move.
You can move both in this circumstance, would that?
Okay, I'll move the Cora Street right turn. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gary. So all those for. Any against? Becca, could you read those out?
Councillors
No talking.
Councillors Southgate, Kesson, Pesco and Tooman and O'Leary dissenting.
Okay, now I'll move the rest of the items. Do we have a seconder?
So was that last one lost or what?
Well, hang on, we can have
Okay, we'll go to the board.
There's a bit of this going on.
No talking, please.
Cora Street.
So just for clarity, we are voting
On the Cora Street right turn of whether it goes to staff for consideration.
Voting on is your recommendation. Yes. Because no one's actually put up a counter recommendation.
No.
Need to, it's either vote for it or not.
The motion is lost. 4 6 against.
No talking, please, Siggy. So now we go to the rest of the paper. Moved by myself, seconded by James. So we go.
Motion is carried 10-4.
We now go to page 133, item 12. Moved by myself, seconded by James. All those for, any against? Carried.